Okay.
Recording in progress.
Welcome, Mercer. And by the way, if you ever deal with Mercer, don't call him Chris. So, welcome and thank you for being here.
There's always another Chris in the room. Everybody calls me Mercer. Thank
I-
you, Fred. Pleasure being here.
I understand. So, first thing I'm going to do is share with people my little diagram, which shows people my stepped process that you're using something similar as well. And in my case, we go from getting the deal to closing the deal to launching the deal with the Mercer presentation, or Q&A, we'll call it today. We're going back and forth about the third step, which is setting the target, tracking your numbers, and optimizing your system. So I'm going to stop that share, and we're going to start with, in the area of launching the deal, setting the target, because frankly, this is an area that you know intimately, that I know unintimately. So what I'm trying to do is talk to people in this program, Dynamic Equity Integration, about how to use the system that I've developed over the last 12 years, which is creating equity partnerships, primarily with course creators, subject matter experts, etc., to make it so that they get paid not only now in a revenue share deal, which is what most people think of with equity, but in my case, we're talking about getting people to get paid forever. And one of the most important things is the numbers. So that's why I brought you in. So let's talk about setting the targets. If I'm dealing with an equity partner, I want to kind of come up with some ideas of what we're shooting for. And so when you're coaching people in your program and tell people about that, how would I do that, or how should I do it? How should they do it?
That's a great question. So the first, I'm going to back up slightly and say there's different levels to this. And I think that's where a lot of people miss. They might hear how you are coming up with your targets, but you've got a little bit more experience than the average bear in this market. So you are going to do it very differently because you have a bigger skill set, a more robust skill set because of that experience, right?
Yep.
Whereas if I'm starting out new, I might not have that. So it's harder for me to follow along with everything you're doing because I don't have the muscles that you have. So even if I understand how you're lifting the weights, I can't lift those weights because I don't have the muscle for it, even though I technically know how to use the machine, right?
Exactly.
So the machine in this case is, how do we figure out what our targets should be? So the reason I started with what I started with is, in the beginning, I think it's 100% fine to just guess. You make it up if you have no other where to go and you don't have anybody else to ask who's in the industry. I would imagine anybody involved in this program with you wouldn't need to guess blindly because you're going to be able to give them some ideas, right?
I call it the
RE
peers
and groups.
I call it the RE method, the method of rectal extraction.
I love it. I love it. So yes, you can go through the RE method. So, and then you got to pull it out from somewhere, but you have a starting point, right?
Yep.
So you could do that. I think that's perfectly acceptable. Even if you're starting with guessing though, you also have to do this other component, which is you have to have a way to measure against that forecast, essentially is what it is, to know, were you right or not? How close were you? Because you're really just guessing at the bullseye. Even if you've been doing this for 25 years, 10 years, 3 years, a ton of deals, you're still guessing. It's that you're guessing with more actual data feeding your guess. So it should be a little bit more in target, right? But in the beginning, you don't have that experience. You have the experience of others, maybe best practices or blogs people are reading that sort of guesstimate what their experiences were. And you can guess. If you guess, you have to measure against it, because what will happen is you'll be like, that deal didn't quite do what I think it was going to do, or not as fast as I thought it was going to do it. So you record that. Now that you're experienced, the next time you guess about that deal, you're going to guess a little better.
Agreed.
And then you get a little closer to it. So your targets become more and more useful because you're consistently using that targeting system, the sort of mini targeting system. Agreed. And I love the RE method. I think that's a perfectly useful way to get it done. Because otherwise people start going, well, I don't know what the right answer is. So they stop. And that's sad, because it's like, okay, neither does anybody else. That's the secret. Nobody else knows either. But at least you're aware that you don't know. Everybody else is just blindly guessing and not realizing it. So guess and then measure against it.
So guessing, in the process of setting that target, what criteria, if you were working with a client or partner directly yourself, how would you go about telling them how to figure that out, even if it's a guess? There's probably certain criteria. Explain that. Yeah,
it depends upon the thing you're guessing, though, right? So it's a little open-ended to say, like, well, how would you guess better? But in the general framework, and I'm gonna use like an opt-in rate, conversion rate, something like that. Like, what's a good opt-in rate? What should my target be for this opt-in rate? So, for example, if I'm looking at a company who is getting it might be, there's some opportunity there with revenue. They're barely profitable. And I start to see their numbers and I see that they're doing 10% opt-in rates to cold traffic. I could look at that and go, that's not how cold traffic should go. Based on my experience, those opt-in rates should be at least double that.
Okay.
So knowing what I know about marketing and opt-in rates and everything else, my forecast is, well, if I can bump that conversion rate to 20%, which better than average chance I should be able to, because that's just how cold traffic works, then if those leads operate the same way the other leads do and his average per lead is, then the revenue can be this much. Now I'm taking that opt-in rate, which was a guess, but based on experience, right? Like, hey, this is an underperforming opt-in rate. I can go ahead and fix this in exchange for some equity. I can start extrapolating out what my revenue increase might be, because if I know every lead's worth X and those leads stay the same, and I can net double the amount, let's say, for the same amount of traffic, that's assuming I can't scale traffic, then I'm gonna have this much more revenue, and now I can measure against that. Did I double my opt-in rate? Did those leads actually stay with their average cart value over time or the average lead value over time? And did those things stay true? And if they did, I'm learning more about this company and how to operate it to make better guesses, more useful guesses in the future. And if they didn't, I'm still learning. And I go, okay, well, that opt-in rate, I got it to 15%, not quite 20. It was harder than I thought it was gonna be, right? Or maybe you overperform and get to 35% really quickly. You're like, wow, maybe I can really scale up the audience now. But either way, you're understanding so the next time you have to make some sort of target, forecast, or prediction about whatever the thing is you're measuring, you're going to be that much better at it because that experience has fed it. And that's the trick to this system. You have to use the system. You cannot think your way through it. So you can't think your way to a perfect prediction. You have to predict your way to a more perfect prediction. And you just get uncomfortable. That beginning part, people are uncomfortable with being wrong. And you're always going to be wrong. That's one of the top skills. Get used to being wrong and sloughing that off and being like, I'm not here for the wrongs. I'm here for the successes. Let's keep moving. And then it just gets a little easier with time.
Perfect. So there are two groups of people that I've encountered and that people who are learning my system will encounter as well. There will be people, and this I've discussed in previous steps in my process, but the two main groups are either someone is starting from scratch, in which case the equity arrangement will be more weighted towards a 50-50 deal, or I bump into somebody who wants to work with me, or people that are going through this program will bump into people who want to work with them who are already an ongoing entity, in which case I always suggest that the lowest end of their equity deal will be at 10%. So the deal will go from 10% to 50% in terms of equity. Why don't you talk to me and to us about how you would look at creating and deciding on a target with someone from scratch. It's clearly a sophisticated wild ass guess, but somebody who is already in business for X number of years, already has, and we usually probably would look at revenue numbers. So talk to me about how you would work with someone who has an ongoing business in which you are coming in and participating in an equity arrangement, obviously less than 50%, but greater than 10%. When you're talking about setting the target with them, what would you do and how would you do it?
So the first thing I would do is I would put it to some sort of number where I could say, this is the impact I'm going to bring them. If they're at 100,000 now and I can get them to 500,000, there's a pretty substantial impact. And then what does 500,000 mean? And this is where I would really break it down, is that I'm able to impact because you didn't have a recurring membership program. So now I'm going to bring this recurring membership program revenue. So that's not $500,000 this year. It's $500,000 this year. It's $400,000 already the year after that. It's $350,000 the year after that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's assuming we don't even get any more members the next year, which of course you will. So now you can start going, listen, I'm going to bring you a massive amount of this thing. And then the more of an impact that I'm going to be able to bring, the more of the pie I should be able to release request. It doesn't mean that I'm going to get it. Yep. But I'm not going to necessarily start with what I exactly will settle for, right? Because that's just, I think human behavior is going to trick people up if they do that. But I will, see, this is what I would be really happy with this, right? And I would have that range. If this is, okay, I'm going to bring a bunch of your stuff. Yes, you've got traffic, you've got a team. I'm just going to be giving them direction. I'm not hiring anybody, but it's my insight, my sort of intellectual property that's going to be able to guide and empower that team. So maybe I don't get 50, I want 40, right? I might be okay with 35 but it would never take less than 30. And now I've got a range where I'm going to go for 40. And then if it falls down, I've got I know where I can be, and have and still be happy with myself. Yeah, that I've got a decent deal for the reward I'm giving, the value I'm bringing.
Perfect. So explain to people how the tools that you have created within your company relate to helping people understand track and determine those numbers?
A great question. So our company is measurementmarketing.io. So we are here for one reason, which is to help marketers, marketing teams, and agencies figure out how to measure how their website's working, right? Including the marketing of that website. So is Facebook causing sales or causing leads or just causing awareness? Is email closing deals like it's supposed to? Is my organic doing what it's supposed to do? Are the behaviors on the site that are happening, is that the behavior we want? Right? So we think about it like a conversation, like your website is having a conversation with your users, and then are we listening to their side of the conversation? Well, proper measurement is how we listen. So we can tell, for example, let's say an e-commerce store, this goes right back into making equity deals. If I had proper measurement into a prospect's store and they're coming to me saying, hey, we might want to do a deal, or I want to see if I can help them out. I might say, okay, well, if with a typical measurement, I see a bunch of product detail page views, and I only see a couple of them that are having decent add to carts, right? And begin checkouts, and the rest of them aren't doing that. But I don't really know why that is. I could guess, and I could say, well, it's because they have the wrong products or whatever. I could guess a million different things. Some of them might be right, some of them might be wrong. Or I could set up proper measurement. So I can go in there, I can measure, and I can literally start to see of the product detail pages, what's the actual conversation that page is having with its users? Not just did they see the page and did they add to cart? Did they see the page? Did they scroll down if it required scroll? Did they stare at the place where my reviews are for at least 6 minutes, interacting with reviews for, let's say, 30 seconds or whatever, just that they're building value, check that. Are they clicking on the images? Did they watch my product demo video for this page? Did the page do its job as a salesperson? So if I can measure all of that, and I come in and I start to see there's a couple of those pages that are really engaging their users, and that's why those users are adding to cart. And all of the other pages, everyone's leaving within 10 seconds. They're not even interacting at all. I go, okay, these two pages are highly engaging the users. It's matching the expectation of the user. The ones where they're bouncing off within 10 seconds, I know those users have no interest in that thing. Either they were set up incorrectly for the product, or it's just a complete mismatch. And now I can confirm, maybe you got a flip out product that's going to save you a bunch of money, right? So if I can reduce your expenses and show you where you should not be spending money, if you have let's say you have a 10% profit, right? For every dollar in expense, that's like you making $10 in revenue.
Yep.
That I don't. So essentially, I'm bringing the flip side of the coin. I'm helping you, remove that and become more profitable, ideally. So that's where I can come in, and then again, you can go back, and as long as you're measuring it, you can lead to those sort of answers. Not to mention, you might just look at it and say, hey, you know what? I can see why they're doing that. These are great products. They're just being set up wrong. Let me adjust the marketing, and then it grows revenue as well for a product that might be good. But measurement allows you to hear that and make those actions a little bit more accessible.
Got it. So remembering that the vast majority of people who, and again, I'll share my screen on this again, the vast majority of these people who are in this program or considering the program, and as you see the screen there, are either coaches, consultants, and or agency owners. There are some others who are in general business, but those are the major ones. And so when we go to the step number 8, which is within the launching the deal, the second step within there, I want you to talk to me how those people, specifically coaches, consultants, and agency owners, what numbers should they be tracking?
So I would measure the at least 3 numbers of everything. I'm gonna kind of talk about this in terms of ACE. So when you're trying to measure your results, I want you to think ACE. So ACE stands for 3 things. We're going to measure when our users are aware of the thing we want them to be aware of, right? Whatever that customer journey is. We're then going to measure when they finish that journey. So for the example of a simple customer journey, could be a purchase, like e-commerce. We're going to be, when they're aware of the product, we might say that's when they're aware that they could have bought this product. When they buy the product and here's a thank you page receipt, that's when they've completed that journey, right? Okay. So that's before and after, aware and complete. Okay. The E is in the middle, and that's the engagement, right? So you measure when they're aware of the journey, measure when they've completed that journey, measure as they engage along the way. So for example, you might do when they begin checkout or see the cart page, right? So like a direct response, especially for a lot of coaches, they're going to use more ClickFunnels style architecture. So it'll be when they see my offer page, I know they are aware that I have this product or service that I was pitching on that. When they see that thank you page, they are now completed. Yep. They've completed the journey. But when they see the cart page in the middle, that's when they're experiencing, they're engaging with that journey. So I know the offer page did its job to get them to the cart page. Did the cart page do its job to get them to the thank you page? And when you measure for those stages, not just how many sales did I make, it's a good place to start, but it doesn't help you understand how you made the sales. And that is the trick. You have to understand not just what your results are, but how you're getting those results. Because when you look at it, you might learn like, okay, this first product we did, about 10% of the people made it to the cart page. And of those, about, let's say 40% of those completed for an average ticket of $10,000, whatever the price point is, to generate that revenue. But you start to understand how that one did. So then when you go to create a new product or service, you now have something to forecast against. Going back to this targeting, you can now target, well, this one should also produce something similar to that. And then you measure against it in the exact same way. And now all of you start to have like these little multiple brand journeys, right? Or user journeys. And all these different user journeys, you start to understand like, oh, this is how they should work. This is how the users should be flowing through it. And the second that you see something broken, it'll be apparent. You'll see like, oh, only 1% on this particular offer, my 12-step kit fast start process or whatever the thing is you came at, only 1% of the people went to the cart. And of those, 90% left, right? They didn't even buy, only 10% bought. You know you've got a serious issue, right? And it's on the offer side in that case, because it wasn't even convincing people to go to the cart, And people that went to the cart, they were confused. They weren't going there to buy, because why else would 90% of them leave? Yep. It's back to the offer. It's like, it doesn't mean the offer's wrong, but it means the offer page needs to be revamped. And so that's sort of how measurement can lead you to actually improve your marketing fairly simply. Even if you only have one product, you'll still see the trends and patterns. So this week, my funnel did 10% went to cart and half of those completed. Next week, 8% went to cart, half of those completed. Okay, fine. The next week, 12% went to cart, 45% completed. Okay, fine. They're all saying I'm working. But if one week you try a new traffic source and all of a sudden one of those numbers goes freaky, you're going to know what's going on and say, this traffic source is what's doing it. And that educates you and it makes you it feels a little more hands-on too. Like you've got control of the business finally, because you understand the machinery of how your marketing is working.
Okay, speaking of the machinery and how your business is working, I want to find out and share with people a little bit about how your system works. I know people can work with you at various different levels. So if I'm doing strictly the DIY version, I know you have that. I know you have a done with you and a done for you. If you could show me and explain to me as well as to others here how those different processes work and what is it that I'm getting, what are the measurements that you are showing me, delivering to me, extracting for me? Explain that.
Sure. So really 3 levels at our company. We've got our DIY level, we call the Measurement Marketing Academy, and that's essentially a membership platform where you come in, you've got courses that are there for you, plenty of workshops that answer some measurement questions and topics. But we also have a lot of human handholding, which I think this industry needs desperately, because we're way beyond I lost my password kind of support. So humans back there, you can send a video or screenshot in, talk through whatever your funnel or customer journey or measurement question is. Some people are asking just for strategy help, like how do I think about this, which is really important. We have courses back there that train on it. And then we've got courses on implementation. How do I use Tag Manager or Google Analytics 4 to set this thing up, get my e-commerce working? No matter what, the instructors can help you out. So you have that ability to sort of work on your own 24/7 with the courses, and you've got actual human beings who do this work, who you're building relationships with, whether there or in the Winner Circle community where the other students are hanging out, they all have different specialties. Some are better at traffic and some are better at offers and some are better at SEO. But they all have measurement in common because we're all learning measurement marketing. And so it's kind of a unique group and a really cool community. I think that's kind of what separates us out. And it's perfect for anybody who's just starting out. You want to have because you want these skills in-house. I mean, measurement really should be thought of like a department, not so much a project anymore. So that's the DIY with the Measurement Marketing Academy. We have various levels. We have a free membership as well that you can get. Then there's the Done With You program. That's for somebody who's already pretty robust. They've got a team and they need their team to have this trained, but they want somebody to make sure that happens. So at that point, we have the Academy for Agencies and Teams program. We'll bring in an instructor, you get a dedicated instructor, and they make sure your team is going through the courses. And they do workshop calls with them. So they'll assign courses to the team. And then they'll workshop. Okay, now everyone has watched how to do this thing or how to use the measurement marketing framework or whatever the thing is. Now we're going to do it. How do we do it for your brand? And the instructor can help them shortcut that process and make sure to, get through the coordination of coordinating with different departments and teams or whatever else is in the organization. So that's that coaching done with you program. And then we do have a done for you program. We're pretty selective on those clients, but essentially we are the outsourced measurement team. We call that dedicated measurement management. And that's where we are measuring for all the on-screen behaviors and what's going on, and obviously building reports that the marketing team can use to improve the value of their results. And that's kind of scoped out specific to each individual client. But I'm a big fan of having these skills in-house. I don't think, unless you absolutely have no other choice, bring in somebody else, but you want these skills in-house because when you understand measurement, specifically measurement strategy and what it can do when applied properly, it's like a turbocharger for your marketers. Yep. And it'll turbocharge their marketing in a very, very real way. It'll help marketing work better, and other parts of your company will start to coordinate a little more. They think differently. It changes how you think about stuff when you really understand measurement strategy.
So going back to, once again, this graphic, I want to then kind of move us, and I know you're going to see it here in a second. You should see it now. When I think about the last step there, what numbers to track and optimizing.
I just see the optimizing systems so far. Oh, okay. The 90-day accelerator slide is what I see right now.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. So that particular one, with that one, Mercer, I'm wondering, in terms of the numbers I'm tracking, back here to step number 8, the one thing that I always think of is, and again, maybe because I'm very simplistic in my views here, is I'm thinking that number one, I want to know, where are people coming from? Are they coming from paid or organic traffic? They're then coming to a page which is trying to get them to take an action, either a temporary action to get them to the next step or a more permanent action, which is to give me money. And then after they give me money, the next step is how long do they stay and do they give me more money? Can you now explain, in terms of this optimizing your systems, what we should do? Am I right, first off, in thinking that those are the basic steps?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, there's always levels to this, right? So you're not going to try to start with what I said, which is let's measure how everybody's interacting with their images and scrolling down on certain parts of the page. Like that requires some measurement muscle. You have to have that skill. You grow into that, right? You wouldn't start there.
Yep.
But you will start with, how much money did I make? Perfect answer.
Yeah.
Now it's, oh wait, how many sales was that? Okay, let's figure that out. Great, let's do that. Now I know how much money and how many units I sold, which means I also know average ticket. And you build into that, and then you starts going to that results and how. But I would encourage individuals to know their how steps. So not just, oh, I made this many sales. If you don't know how you made those sales, it's dangerous for you. You're at Vegas betting it all on black every time. You don't know that you're doing that though. We call this the curse of a good offer, but it happens all the time especially with higher end clients, because they've scaled so much and they weren't measuring properly. So let's say they spend $100 on Facebook, Facebook gives them $200 of sales. They go, this is great. I'm going to put $200 on Facebook. Facebook gives them $500 in sales. They go, this is amazing. They keep doing that until one day they're at $10,000 daily budgets. And one day Facebook keeps the money. Nothing happens. They all turn around like, what broke? No one knows.
Yeah.
Because nobody cared, because they were letting the algorithm do its thing or whatever. But they can't see that, oh, it's the product detail of the offer, or hey, they're not going through the product page the way they used to, or hey, they can't see anything. So because they can't see that, they can't fix it. Meanwhile, they are burning cash, and they also weren't effectively measuring how long it took that cash to be replenished. So now they're growing cash poor, and a lot of companies will scale so big they implode because they run out of cash because they weren't properly predicting it, because they weren't measuring it. So you have to be on the results and how. And I know that went a little higher end for some businesses, but as a small business, you have to know how many people were aware of this product. How many people did I ask to buy? I think it's a simple sales pipeline. How many people did I ask to buy? How many of those considered buying? How many of those became transactions, right? That's all it is. But 3 steps, I think, is the ideal number to focus on at whatever level that you're comfortable. So if you're not measuring, did they purchase, then start with that, right? Did they at least complete? Then how many do we ask to do that? And then how do I measure if they considered or not? So I know, is it that we didn't ask enough people, or is it that we're asking them, but they're just not considering it, which means maybe it's the wrong audience. So, that's sort of how I'd use those numbers together.
So within each of those steps that you just mentioned there's obviously many steps and nuance within there. I don't know if you can, I mean, I'm sure that when you're working with a done-for-you client in which you are really looking at the minutia here to try and extract and figure out a way to eke out or squeeze out an additional 7 or 8% or whatever it is, what are some of those internal numbers over and above those general numbers that you look for to try and tweak people's results to really, that most people don't consider? What are some of those? Kind of insider.
Some of the fine tuning can get a little esoteric. So I'll talk about a couple examples of things you can do and things that we've done, but I wouldn't say this is what you have to do too, right? I wouldn't, because at a certain level you are so heavily customized that the solution I come up with client A does not apply to any other client.
Got it.
Because at that point we're optimizing their brand, not their business model and not their website, right? Okay. So that's when you're first going through, you measure the website behaviors, then the business model behaviors. So in e-commerce is going to be different than a lead generation business. And then what's their brand behaviors? Like how do they speak about stuff? So, but to give you an example of what's possible with measurement as you build your skills, I don't think you need to start day one, but you can build your skills, is let's pretend you have a YouTube video that's embedded on an offer page, right? Okay. And it might be a little VSL style, or it might be a product demo that you're walking through, or here's what it's like to work with me or whatever, or testimonials that are YouTube videos. With a platform like GA4, Google Analytics 4, which is completely free, everybody has available to be able to use it, and you should be using it. That platform will automatically measure for embedded YouTube videos. And it will automatically tell you, like, hey, they started playing this video, or they watched it 30% or 50% of the way, you know, and it'll do that.
So it gives you that data, kind of Wistia-like, where it'll tell you how long they played the video.
For YouTube embedded, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But it absolutely will. And that's a free tool that you don't even have to do. You just install the script and it starts doing that. It's a pretty cool tool, kind of out of the box, which is nice, right? Especially when you just want to get up and running really quickly. But that, because you can see that, right? We have a client that we're working with where they had multiple paths through a particular funnel. So all the same product, just different paths through that product. And all the audience was the same, and they sort of just split them up through these paths. Let's say roughly the average ticket was $500. So it was $500 on path A, $500 on path B, $500 on path C, $400 on path D. We're like, okay, we now know the forecast should be $500 because that's what the other ones are doing. This one not doing that. Why? So was it just because, and then so we look and we say, okay, well, they're buying more payment options. That's why the average ticket was lower. Same units, they bought more payment options. So then you go, okay, all the paths had either do payments or full pay. The other paths had a certain percentage, let's just say it's 50-50 full pay and payments. They all did that. This other one was more like 80-20. Okay, why was this group, do you think just this group randomly just didn't have the money? Not at all. They were all the same audience coming in, randomly split. So that's not it. So we go, what is this page's conversation? This page did not do a good job minimizing risk or building the value. So they were minimizing their own risk by doing payments just in case they're wrong. And it didn't have the value to make the obvious no-brainer, how I'm gonna do the full pay. The other three paths were. So then we can look at that and say, okay, what are these other three paths? What is the style? What are some of the words? How do we talk about something? Is that how we also talked about it on path D? And if not, then we carry that over. We go, let's try to help path D out, because in my head, they're just 4 different salespeople, and this one needs a little training. So we revamp the offer, revamp the page. But measurement is what told us where to focus our results versus we're just guessing going, well, I guess they buy more payments. Okay, but that's actually, hey, this is not working properly. You know, they should be doing what the other ones were doing. Why not? And what can we do to maybe enhance that? Yeah. And that's where the numbers, the measurements will actually lead you to at least where to focus your resources to hopefully move the needle to improve those numbers.
You gave the example earlier of somebody who started advertising on Facebook and sequentially started building up and up and up and up, and then all of a sudden everything went bust. How early on, and I guess this is part of the reason why you guys have multiple steps to bring your customers through, in which you can start for free, you can move to the next step, you can move up. At what point, and I kind of know the answer to this, but at what point should people be installing measurement systems in their business? Right
now, you knew I was going to say it from the start. Here's why. You do not need to be an expert in the platform. Even if you're just installing the script, even if what we call you just activated the tool, because a lot of people think that just because they turned it on, they can start using it. You really can. It just starts filling with stuff, but it's not set up yet, so don't try to use it. But even if you just activate the platform and it's alive, even if you don't use it today, you've got measurement. You've at least gone checkbox, I have measurement. Now it's not set up measurement, it's learn how to use what's there. And then you can go back, and whether you take it from us, watch our YouTube channel, go to somebody else's course, don't care, but learn the tool for what you need, right? So we break it out. We have like the setup for Google Analytics 4 as an example. Then we do the basics of Google Analytics 4. Then we have the beyond basics when you're ready for that. But we break them out on purpose because the setup and the basics are the things you really should know, right? And then the beyond basics is like, hey, when you're ready, if you really want to do some fancy stuff, there's some others, but you grow into that complexity. Start with the simple stuff. To your point, the second I start spending money on Facebook, I am absolutely going to want to know what happened to that money. So Facebook's going to say, hey, we sold 14 things, but it's going to look weird to you because your Google Analytics might say, no, email sold 14 things. So both are right. And you start to understand, this is where you start to learn measurement a little bit. You go, okay, well, that's Facebook's version of the truth. All they see is Facebook. That makes sense. Here's Google Analytics, which can see everything. So it also is correct. Email did help. But now I'm starting to go, maybe that Facebook audience is creating leads. Maybe that's what it's good at. And I should use it for that. And then emails is what closes the deal. And that's how I'm going to judge my emails now. So now I stop measuring Facebook for sales. I start measuring for the number of leads. And that's how its definition of success is. And that could be doing this with a $10 a day budget, right? So just when you're starting out, you can do that, see this in Google Analytics. And then later, again, measure your emails. Are the emails closing like they should? Are the leads closing within a certain number of days or in this particular campaign sequence that you created? You can see that in Google Analytics. And now you know how to combine traffic sources to move somebody through your sales pipeline, which, again, we're just referencing as user journey. Same exact steps. Doing that. And measurement absolutely helps with that.
2 follow-up questions on that. Number one is and again, I'm not the technical side of my business, but I know enough to ask the right questions. How bad is the Facebook data that they give you?
Not bad, right? Everything is a version of the truth. They're not giving you bad information. They're giving you everything they know. But that doesn't mean what they were told was correct. So for example, if I set up your purchase conversion pixel incorrectly and it fires every single time you load your homepage, Facebook will gladly scream about how many sales you're making, right? But it's not correct. But it's also not wrong. You told it accidentally, but you told it you're making these sales. It's just reporting what it was told was the truth. But it has no idea if it is.
So people that bitch all the time about the fact that Facebook gives you BS data, that's not really true. What's true is that people are missetting up the process and getting bad data because of their own, stupidity.
In a lot of cases, that it's user error. They're feeding garbage in, so they're getting garbage out.
Okay.
Because the same thing can happen in GA4 if you don't properly set up that platform. And this is how you know when you go back in your Google Analytics 4, if it looks like the Matrix and you're like, how do I decode this? That's not properly set up. That's why it looks crazy. And that's why things don't make sense because you haven't actually set it up. Most companies don't know that.
So how difficult is that setup?
It takes a few hours just to kind of go through there. But remember, this is like a one and done thing. Okay. So like we have a course on it that walks you through step by step. Here, think about this, think about this, think about this. And then how you're going to get that information in there is important. And so we teach that strategy. We're very strategy first because I think strategy should dictate your tools, not the other way around. Most people try to buy the tool and now they're restricted to some strategy that tool wants you to use as opposed to you having your own strategy and making the tool fit in.
Speaking of tools, why don't you compare and contrast Google Analytics 4 with Alex Becker's $110 million high rose that he just sold?
Yeah, I know. Good for him. Can't hate the player, But the idea on Hyros, I think it's good for what it does. I'm not a big believer in you should never use these platforms. I think everything has its purpose. Okay. Wicked reports included, right? For Google Analytics, my personal experience has been, I've not been able to. I have always been able to answer every question I've ever had using the tools that I currently use, which is like Google Analytics, right? For primarily. So it's got what I need. And if it doesn't, the cart does. And then I'll blend the data somewhere and I can get any question I want because I understand measurement, right? So I can build a system that gives me every answer I want. If I want ROAS or ROI or whatever, trace it back to this, that, the other thing, I can do it a million different ways. So I already have those skills because I have the muscle. I can get more out of those tools than what everybody else can because they don't even know those tools can do that because they don't know measurement, right? So it goes back to being a chef. If I'm a really good chef, you can give me incredibly bad, poor tools like on a camper stove. I'm going to make you a pretty good meal because I understand ingredients, I understand strategy of food. Same thing with measurement. You got to stay in strategy and measurement. You get more from the tools. So again, are those tools bad choices? No, not at all.
So
They're just
to get right to the
more
point,
push button
then,
simple.
is it necessary for me to invest in something like Hyros, which costs a bunch of money, as opposed to Google Analytics, if I know what the heck I'm doing?
I would, as long as you grow through Google Analytics and you decide later, like this is personally how I would do it. I'd be like, if I'm growing out of my tool, I'm a really big believer in this because it's so easy to make things complicated.
Yes.
It is a skill to keep things simple, right? So as I'm growing from one tool into another, just because a tool exists doesn't mean I'm going to buy it, right? So I'm going to grow in through Google Analytics 4. I'm going to do everything I can to max out the power of that platform. At a certain point, if it starts tapping out, it's like, I can't do this, I will then see the next new tool. I've climbed the mountaintop, I'll see the next. If at that point, that new tool is Hyros because it only does this certain thing that I need it to do really well, and it's worth the money for me and I can comfortably afford it, I never want to go cash flow poor, but if I can comfortably afford it, then I might at that point leap to that. So there is a path where I could see that being absolutely reliable. If you're just skipping, I don't want to learn measurement, I just want somebody else's push button tool, they're going to tell me where to spend my money, go. Okay, but that's going to be a mistake because that's where you start having these blind, what happens is a lot of black box starts happening. You start looking at a number going, that doesn't feel right, but you have no idea how they're getting that number there. And then you start questioning things. Then you're like, why am I paying all this money? And then you cycle out of the tool and you try to find the next new tool. But you have to change, not the tool. Your strategy has to change. If you don't treat measurement like a department, the tools are not going to do it for you. They're treating them, they're going to make you fit their framework of the world, not the other way around. And again, tools should be there to serve you, not, we're too busy getting caught up in being the product for everybody's businesses. We don't need to do that with these tools. They should serve our strategies. So that's why I'm a big strategy first. Grow through the tools you're currently using. When they max out, then add on another tool, but it's only when you need it and you're growing into the complexity.
Okay, so I'll try this one more time. Is there any, has there been any situation for you or your clients in which you have outgrown Google Analytics and needed Hyros?
No, as I said earlier, I have yet to reach a question that I can't answer with measurement.
So therefore, if we're really talking straight here, if you know how to use Google Analytics, it's the only tool you need, but you need to understand how to interpret the data, and you don't need any additional tools. Is that accurate?
It will be the first tool you'll need. There are always other tools. This is why measurement's a department, not a project. You're eventually going to add in Tag Manager. You might add in Looker Studio. You might do BigQuery. There's lots of measurement tools. Microsoft Clarity, Hotjar, Crazy Egg, lots of these. The point is you don't start them all today. You don't need them all this second.
Perfect.
You need the first one, which is Google Analytics. Get good at that one and then grow into the other ones. Like, oh, I want to see heat maps and scroll maps. Perfect. Now you can go to Microsoft Clarity, also free, by the way, great tool, use them. Okay. But you're growing from one into the other. You're not trying to do both at the same time because it's too much too soon, and it can feel overwhelming at that point and harder to learn.
Well, having almost been a professional golfer, it sounds to me like the grip, the stance, and the swing is Google Analytics. That is the base of
the basics.
Everything.
Yeah. Google's got all the free tools, so why not just stick with them? I'm a big fan of that.
Absolutely.
It's not broken.
And then if people want to get more sophisticated in the use and the understanding of those tools, they come to you, and we're going to put a link somewhere on this page or in this particular presentation that you can get to. So, Chris, any other final thoughts before I let you go?
I just love the fact you ended it by calling me Chris, even though you started it with the Mercer thing in the beginning. So I thought that was awesome.
Oh,
so thank you for that. Way to close the loop. It was perfect. That's all right. Happens all the time. It's cool. But yeah, we're creating that link. It's going to be measurementmarketing.io/Fred. When you go there, I would encourage everybody to do that. We're giving you a free strategy course called the Measurement Marketing Framework. It will teach you the strategy of measurement at whatever stage of the organization that you are, right? Smaller, larger, whatever. So you'll have that for free. And we have about 40 tools. There's traffic tracking toolkits, there's dashboard planners. We give all those away for free to help people get started. So I would definitely encourage you to take a look at that for sure.
Mercer, thank you, man. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Fred. Pleasure having me.
You got it. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Bye. And let's see.
Recording stopped.
And we're out. So there we go.
All right.
Thank you, man.
I think I combined